It didn't matter if you were of the white race, the black race, the brown race, or whatever. So social issues I try to get in the background or underlaying a plot, but never to the point of letting it interfere with the story or hitting the reader over the head.
The X-Men are one of the most recognizable groups of characters in literature history. They've gotten more adaptations than I can count, but in the live-action area, they leave something to be desired. The X-Men and the mutants as a whole is an incredible gateway to telling stories that show a mirror image of our own world. A story of representation, segregation, family, love, hope, and companionship. The X-Men are different from us for many reasons, but they're also the best of us, the most flawed of us. I've written a Daredevil trilogy in the past, and I've been meaning to get around to the X-Men for even longer. I've been trying to figure out which lineup of characters I want to use and which stories to tell and how I want to tell those, but I think I've finally figured it out. The previous X-Men movies have ranged from great to less than great. I'm not saying I can do better, but I do think I can give a more accurate representation of these characters and highlight what fans love about them, to really show why these characters have been pop culture icons for decades. Now, I originally wanted to pitch a trilogy, but I think I can condense everything I wanted to say down into one fantastic movie. Shave off the unnecessary details and really make a movie packed with everything we love to see. Every single one of these characters have more than enough story potential within them to warrant solo movies on their own, so we need to be able to do them justice in one singular film. So which characters will we be using in this movie? Well, the main team will consist of 7 members, then the addition of Professor X and the antagonist of the movie, Mr. Sinister. The first and most important character of this movie needs to be Cyclops, with Jean Grey following after in importance. There is a lot to Scott Summers that people don't understand. The movies made him seem second fiddle to Wolverine, and it never should be that way. Scott has more depth than anyone on that team. He deals with the crushing weight of expectation placed upon him by Xavier and the rest of the team. He's the leader. He's strong-willed and level-headed. He's a tactical genius, always coming up with plans on the battlefield. There's so much more I could get into, but that would take all day. With that out of the way, let me run you through everyone else on the roster. I'll be using Cyclops, Jean Grey, Wolverine, Rogue, Gambit, Storm, and Beast. Let me run you through the castings quickly. For Cyclops, I'll be choosing Richard Madden. I'm not extremely sold on him, but you could pick anybody who gives off the same energy as him and it would work just as well. Jean Grey will be played by Jane Levy from the 2013 remake of Evil Dead and Don't Breathe. She has the warm energy that we're looking for, as well as being powerful and tormented by that power. Taron Egerton will be Wolverine because he deserves it. He has so much range, and he would be an incredible Logan. He's shorter than Richard Madden too, although not by much, but that's an important fact. Rogue will be played by Diana Silvers. She has the youthful energy needed, and she can be a good way to introduce this team of X-Men in a similar way the original film did back in 2000. Austin Butler is the perfect Gambit. He's got the charm, the attitude, the ability to do difficult accents, and the physical look. I don't even need to explain this. He is Gambit. For Storm, we need someone who has a powerful presence. That's why I believe Anna Diop would crush this. She's already played a powerful superhero in a team of odd ones when she was Starfire and Titans, but she was really miscast in that role, and I think she deserves another chance at a popular character like this. These next 2 castings, I'd like to give credit to Superframe for these, because they were the absolute perfect choices and I couldn't have found better if I tried. That would be Jeffrey Wright for Beast and Ralph Fiennes for Professor X. Christian Bale is Mr. Sinister. Gore the God Butcher was an extreme waste of a character, but it showed that Christian Bale is interested in playing comic book villains. Mr. Sinister is campy and having fun doing these inhumane acts, but he's also able to flip it like a switch and become the most menacing and threatening person in the room. Now, with all this set in place, let's get into how I would make an X-Men movie. The movie begins in your face. We see a team of mutants infiltrating a laboratory in the jungle. In front, we see Cyclops. We get to see how he commands the situation and leads the team in the field. Behind him, Jean Grey and Iceman follow. They stealthily move through the walls, avoiding security. Cyclops reaches for his earpiece and asks if it's ready yet. We then see Beast inside of the Blackbird, located a ways outside of the laboratory. Beast replies, telling him that it's almost done. Also on the earpiece is Professor X. He reminds Cyclops why they're there, and they need to bring the target alive. Cyclops tells Charles that's what Beast is handling. They can't get the target without the piece of technology that Hank is working on. We then hear another voice over the comms. Flying high above the laboratory is Angel, keeping an eye on the exterior. He tells Cyclops, Jean, and Iceman to watch their backs. Just as he says this, the door opens and the crew is spotted. Before the troops can fire, Jean uses her mind control and commands them to leave and forget they were there. The guards turn around and exit the way they came. The team continues on until eventually they reach a massive room with lab equipment everywhere. They investigate further before they find something horrible. Rows and rows of what appear to be jail cells with a large array of mutants in them. They all look monstrous and horrific. Iceman tells Cyclops that they need to help these people. Cyclops tells Iceman that they came for a specific person. Beast looks on the monitor to see everything that the team inside is seeing, and he's horrified. It shakes him to his core. Jean tells Cyclops that if they need help, then it's the X-Men's responsibility to help them. Charles agrees with Jean over the comms. Cyclops takes a moment to think. He tells Beast to try hacking into the doors and open them. He continues down the hallway with Jean and Iceman until Angel comes over the comms once more. His voice is static due to the reception of the lower levels of the lab they're in. Cyclops tells him to keep a sharp eye out, but they're spotted by one they came for. A tall man with a long cape and heavy armor stands in front of them. His eyes glow a piercing red and his teeth are like razors. The target they were after was Mr. Sinister, the evil mutant scientist. Outside, a massive wave of troops approach the entrance of the building. They position outside and block the escape. Angel sees this and swoops down to attack. Back inside, we get our first hints of who Mr. Sinister is as a character. He loves what he does. He taunts the X-Men by showing them how he views his test subjects, as disposable experiments. A fight ensues and Mr. Sinister is able to hold his own against the three heroic mutants. His telekinesis, regeneration, and energy blasts make him a formidable foe. Mr. Sinister is able to knock Iceman unconscious, but he's overwhelmed by Cyclops and Jean's powers when used in tangent with one another. Cyclops and Jean are able to knock down Mr. Sinister just enough for Cyclops to order a retreat. They grab Iceman and escape. As they pass by the cells, the doors open and the captive mutants are able to escape. Outside, Beast notices Angel fighting the horde of troopers. He rushes out there and joins the fight. His way of fighting isn't primal or animalistic as his appearance may imply. He uses gadgets and punches mixed with his big leaps and thick durable skin for protection. When the rest of the team gets outside, they join in on the battle. Cyclops gives Iceman to Beast and tells him to get to the med bay on the Blackbird. Cyclops and Jean help Angel dispatch the troopers. Just then, the group of captive mutants come rushing out of the doors. Beast directs them to follow him and they all board the plane. Cyclops, Jean, and Angel notice everyone is on board safely, so they all make a run for the plane. After they get on, the jet takes off and leaves the area. Mr. Sinister exits the laboratory and watches as the Blackbird flies away. He grins, clearly taking an interest in Cyclops and Jean. And that's the opening. I know, very in-depth, but I wanted to highlight some important things about these characters to show Jean's mindset and the way of being the warm voice in Cyclops' mind. I wanted to highlight Beast's caring and intelligent nature, how he chooses to not give in to his primal instinct. He'll choose combat to help his friends, but won't seek out a fight. However, the most important thing about this scene was showing Cyclops' mentality. He was faced with a choice: stick to the mission and capture Mr. Sinister, or go off-plan and rescue the mutants, even though that meant Sinister would be aware of their presence. Even with Mr. Sinister, we've established his driving force for the rest of the movie. The next scene would make a tonal shift. 5 years later, we see the inside of a college dorm room. Posters, plants, candles, and clothes line the room. The room is silent, but we hear distraught voices in the distance as we are introduced to Anna Marie. She's a young woman just over 20. Mascara runs from her eyes as tears decorate her cheeks. She stares at her hands, shaking. The camera pans down and we see a man the same age as her lying on the ground unconscious. Unable to conjure words, she runs. She's helpless and she's scared. That night we see Anna navigating through Caldecott County, Mississippi. As she walks through the pouring rain, still clearly shaken, we hear a man's voice in the distance. Anna's immediately alarmed and she looks around. The man steps out to reveal himself. He wears a long brown coat over a purple vest. He smirks in a smug, almost flirtatious way. Then the Blackbird emerges from the sky above and lands behind Anna. She turns around, still on edge. The door opens up and a tall woman dressed in white steps out. The woman extends a comforting hand to the poor girl. "You're not alone. None of us are." We've just been introduced to Rogue, Gambit, and Storm. Anna just gained her powers and she's terrified of them. She's the new recruit on the team, and we'll get to see her grow from a scared outcast to a brave and powerful hero. Gambit means well, but he can't help himself but make himself seem like the party guy. The one who's always ready to make a slick remark even if the situation doesn't call for one. Then there's Storm. She's willing to help this young girl immediately. Perhaps this is because she sees herself in Anna, a young woman who was arguably cursed with abilities, and they can do more harm than healing if used without proper training. After this, we arrive at Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, also known as X-Mansion. This is where we get our formal introductions to everyone. We get to meet all of our main players in the story and we understand who they are more clearly. We need to remember that this isn't connected to any cinematic universe, so this is our first introduction to these renditions of these characters. Now in Xavier's office, this is where the professor explains to Anna what the school is. Jean then offers to show Anna to her room and takes her out of the office. From here, we're introduced to Mr. Sinister once more. After these past few years, Sinister has taken up a new base of operations. He resides on an island in the South Pacific where he conducts his experiments. As the camera pans out to reveal the rest of the island, we see that he populates the island with hundreds of Mr. Sinister clones. Once the X-Men is formed, Sinister made it his mission to continue his experiments with its members until he's able to transfer all of their powers to himself, rendering him the ultimate mutant. And it just so happens that a mutant with the power to take others' abilities has just surfaced. This causes Mr. Sinister to engage directly with the X-Men once more. He needs Anna. I think the next few scenes should be ones of character building. We get to see more of the school through the eyes of Anna. That's when Jean sits her down and has a heart-to-heart with her. In a warm, motherly tone, Jean explains that she understands how this is a lot. She was there too. They all were. Every single mutant roaming in these halls has, in one way or another, been right where Anna is at this very moment. Jumping back to the X-Men, Charles and Scott talk. From here, we learn that Charles sends a mutant operative back to the laboratory they invaded 5 years ago to see if there could be any sign of Mr. Sinister being there or a clue as to where he's gone. However, it's been a few days and there hasn't been any communication with the operative. Charles tells Scott he thinks it's best to prepare the X-Men for a rescue mission. Scott understands and he leaves the room. We then get to see Scott gathering up all the X-Men we'll be following on this mission. He brings Jean, Storm, Gambit, and Beast. Later that night, the team lands back on the island. When they do, they all head outside except for Beast, who stays on the Blackbird. What the hell are you bubs doing here? The team lets their guard down. Cyclops steps forward. So this is where you've been. Wolverine approaches the group. Then he notices Jean. He looks at her, and there's clearly something between them. Jean breaks their silence. Well, we're glad you're alright, Logan. The professor lost communication with you a few days ago. Logan tells them that he turned off the comms so he could focus. He can't stand having someone in his ear telling him what to do. While they're scoping out the abandoned laboratory, we have a chance to delve into the subtleties of our core team. We get hints of the love triangle with Scott, Jean, and Logan. We see that Wolverine isn't good with taking orders, especially from Scott. We see Gambit's chill nature and how serious he can really take things. While they walk through the corridors in dingy spaces, we also get to see Storm's claustrophobia kick in. Cyclops orders Jean to take Storm back up to the surface. As they begin heading to the surface, the doors close and lock from the outside. Through the overhead speakers, Mr. Sinister's voice can be heard. He monologues for a moment about how he was interested in Cyclops and Jean, but with the arrival of the new mutant girl, he doesn't need them anymore. Just then, clones of Sinister fill the room, ready to kill the X-Men. This is our first fight with our main group of characters. This is an incredibly important moment for the story. Unlike the Avengers or the Justice League, the X-Men don't need to learn how to work with one another. They're a family and they know one another through and through. This fight will instead focus more heavily on what they're willing to do for one another, how they're willing to die to help their friends. Back at the mansion, Mr. Sinister strikes. He invades the school looking for Anna. As this happens, Professor X manages to get Anna to a safe place while Angel and Iceman help the other children. I think it would be cool if we took a bit of a horror angle for this scene. We could have Mr. Sinister and his clones walking through the dark hallways of the school. We'll occasionally have mutants attack Mr. Sinister, but they'll easily be dealt with. One attempt is different though. Angel and Iceman grab him, and using an icicle, Iceman stabs Mr. Sinister through the neck and he dies. I think part of the reason Mr. Sinister can be such a terrifying threat is that you can't kill him very easily. Whenever you kill him, his consciousness is transferred to one of his clones, rendering him immortal as long as he has living clones on Earth. The clone, now with Mr. Sinister's mind and powers, attacks Iceman and Angel. He almost wins until Professor X enters the hallway. He attempts to mind control Mr. Sinister, but it doesn't work. Somehow, the villain has found a way to counter mind control abilities. Mr. Sinister grabs Professor X out of his chair and picks him up by the neck. He demands to know where the girl is, but Charles won't break. Just then, a noise can be heard from the roof. Mr. Sinister grins and drops Charles to the floor. He and his clones then head to the roof. Back in the laboratory, the team manages to defeat all of the clones. They're about to leave, but Wolverine notices something. Coordinates for somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. Cyclops takes them and tucks them away. As they get to the Blackbird, Beast is listening to a distress signal from Charles. Cyclops realizes it was all a setup. The team then takes off full speed back to the mansion. Anna stands atop the roof. She tries to find somewhere to go, but there's nowhere. She's trapped. Mr. Sinister reaches the roof and he looks at her as he tells her to come with him. Anna's frightened as anyone would be. She's unable to figure out where to go. Living or deceased, I can work with either one. Make your choice, girl. Anna refuses to go with him, so he fires an energy blast at her, blasting a hole in the building, throwing her from the roof. Mr. Sinister fires again, and Anna flies off, narrowly escaping with her life. Later, the X-Men arrive to find the mansion on fire with a large hole in the side as students and faculty escape. The Blackbird lands, and the X-Men exit the plane. They find the professor being helped by Angel and Iceman. Scott questions if Sinister escaped, and Charles tells him that they did the best they could. Jean asks if anyone was hurt, and Angel says that there were injuries, but nothing was fatal. Everyone's okay. Charles tells Scott that Anna's missing, but Mr. Sinister doesn't have her yet. They need to find her before Sinister does. And now we enter the third act. I think a lot of comic book movies fall flat with their final acts because they have a disposable army with a skybeam and call it a day. However, the finale needs character. It needs emotional stakes. Before I explain the finale though, let me recap where all of our characters are in the story. Starting with Scott, he feels the obligation to lead this team. It's been his driving force throughout the whole movie, but leading his team into Sinister's trap hurt his confidence. He knows his morals and ideals, but he can't help but take responsibility for not seeing the signs before he almost got his friends killed. With Jean, the connection she made with Anna earlier will be her driving force in this movie. We'll get to see how Anna going missing affects her. Not only that, but things get more complicated when Logan shows up again. She needs to keep things professional while also acting as a role model for the team. Storm is also in an interesting position. While she hasn't gotten the most character development in the story, I'm structuring this movie to act as the beginning of a larger story. Her, Gambit, and Wolverine will have bigger parts in movies to come. Alright, time for the beginning of the end. The third act begins with Professor X using Cerebro to locate Anna. He finds her in Mississippi trying to return home. Scott makes a plan. Anna's gone rogue. Jean, Storm, Gambit, you three will take the Blackbird and find her. She needs our help. Gambit then makes a point. You ever considered that maybe she doesn't want our help? Cyclops is about to speak, but Charles interrupts him. If a young mutant is in need of help, it is our obligation to help that young mutant even if they don't realize how much they need it. With that, the A-team heads off to find Anna. The B-team is made up of Charles, Scott, Hank, and Logan. Hank asks what they're supposed to do, and Scott looks to Charles. We need to see an old friend. We cut back to Mississippi. We're in Caldecott County once again. Anna approaches a house in the middle of a field. As she walks up the steps to the front porch, she reaches for the door. She takes a deep breath and raises her hand, then knocks. After a moment, the door opens. A man, somewhere in his 50s, stands there. A look of shock overcomes his face. His eyes tear up and he calls out a woman's name. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Anna says quietly, almost shamefully. Her parents both rush in for a hug, but Anna steps back. Don't. I can't hurt you. Come on inside. Next, we're in Poland. Charles, Scott, Logan, and Hank approach a dimly lit cabin in the woods. The team heads in, and they're greeted by a man sitting in a chair by the fireplace. To what do I owe the pleasure? Logan chimes in. There is no pleasure. We need something from you. Quiet, Logan, Scott demands. We need your help, Eric. The man once known as Magneto leans forward. You're desperate, old friend. What has the great Professor X fearful? Nathaniel Essex. He's returned. We wouldn't be here unless absolutely necessary. Eric leans back. Why now? What's changed? There's a girl, a young mutant. Her powers are dangerous, abilities that can nullify any mutant. Essex wants to get his hands on those powers. There was a time where I wouldn't have helped you in this situation, but Mr. Sinister is a different kind of monster. I wouldn't wish him upon my worst enemy. His methods have gotten worse. He's more vile than ever before. We don't know how to stop him. And you believe I can assist? You're our best chance at stopping him. Eric thinks for a moment. Alright then, he's a man playing God, a man playing mutant. You can exploit this, figure out how. Charles thanks Eric, and they turn to leave. Eric stops them. And one last thing before you go, he says, don't let that girl become a problem. If she does, I'll step in. Inside the home of Anna's parents, they sit in the living room. As the conversation continues, we build to a climax, a shift tone. The moment Anna mentions the word mutant, the world goes cold. My daughter? A mutant? Anna looks up. I'm sorry. My daughter? One of those things? Was it one of those mutants you were around? Did they infect you? It's not like that. It's not how it works. My daughter is no mutant, and until you can fix that, you are not my daughter. Anna can't speak. She doesn't know what to say. Get out of my house. You are not welcome here. As if on cue, the Blackbird is heard outside. Anna walks out the front door and is greeted by Storm, Jean, and Gambit. Gambit takes his coat and wraps it around Anna as he leads her to the plane with Jean. Anna looks up at him, then leans her head onto his shoulder as they walk. Storm looks inside of the house. She's heartbroken. A single tear falls from her eye and she wipes it away. You should be ashamed of yourselves. With that, she exits the house. Back at the mansion, the team gears up for the final battle. As they make a strategy for how they're going to capture Mr. Sinister, Anna insists on going with them. Scott immediately tells her that she can't, but Anna puts her foot down. She's going to be a part of this. She's all in. With that, we get a suit-up montage. Yes, I know they're corny, but they're so cool and we need to bring those back. There's ways to make them not corny, just look at like the suit-up scenes from Iron Man. The final battle takes place on Mr. Sinister's island. When they land, their goal is to make their way to Sinister without being seen by the hundreds of clones. They eventually reach this grand hall, looking like a sort of throne room, with Mr. Sinister on that very throne. Mr. Sinister cues in his clones. He doesn't send the whole army, but enough to make the team sweat. Cyclops makes a decision. He tells Storm and Jean to follow him after Sinister. The rest of the team is to stay back and not let the clones interfere. Rogue flies around the room, punching the clones and kicking them from above, while Gambit uses his playing cards and other objects around him as explosives for crowd control. As for Wolverine and Beast, they tear through the clones like animals. This battle rages on as Cyclops, Jean, and Storm fight Mr. Sinister. He taunts them and plays on their morals, their emotions. The more he talks, the angrier the three get. He speaks of the horrible things he's done to mutants and what horrible things he's going to do to Rogue when he gets his hands on her. This causes Jean and Storm to work in unison with the full power as Cyclops hits him with his optic beam. All of this power combined is enough to kill Mr. Sinister, but as we know, this won't matter. His consciousness is transferred to a clone that enters the room to continue the fight. After a while of fighting, it seems like there's no hope. Everyone is tired and losing motivation. They can't kill him, and he seems to have an endless supply of clones at his disposal. Right as they're about to go down, Cyclops gets an idea. Cyclops reaches for his comms. "Beast, how far are we from the mainland?" Beast takes a moment to calculate, then replies, "Somewhere between 750 to 1,000 miles, why do you ask?" Cyclops turns back to Storm. "How big of a hurricane can you create?" Cyclops uses his comms to tell everyone to retreat. They all do so as Storm flies out of the building and high above the island. The team regroups at the Blackbird, and to do a head count, they make sure everyone's there. Someone's missing. They look back into the throne room to see Wolverine still slicing away, barely winded. Cyclops demands him to get back to the plane, and Wolverine hesitates. He gives in though and gets to the Blackbird. Soon enough, a hurricane, bigger than the island itself, completely overtakes the landmass and submerges everything and everyone on it into the deep depths of the ocean. Storm flies above the wreckage and a receding tropical storm. She breathes, taking a moment, before heading back with the X-Men. 1 week later, the X-Men all sit in front of the school. It's under reconstruction and will continue to be for the next few months. The team is together once again, and we can feel the familial bond between them. There's something beautiful with this group of outcasts finding themselves in each other, finding what makes them who they are. We close on the sign outside of the school, Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. We hold on the X as we fade to black. And that's my X-Men movie. Now, I know I'm not a screenwriter, but I'm just a guy with a love of these characters and a passion for movies, and this pitch was inspired out of that love and passion, not the opinion that I could do better than the professionals. So thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe, join my Discord server to be in the loop with everything I do on this channel. It's a great little community over there, and we'd be happy to have you. So if you want some inside scoops on everything to do with this channel, the link is down below. And I will see you all later. Take it easy.